Yes. Welcome back to another video where we are going to be walking through a Leetcode sample SQL interview exercise. This one has to do with trips and users. It is problem 262. We're going to walk through this solution together. We're going to walk through how we kind of think about it and ultimately hopefully submit this near the end. I will say as a disclaimer for this, there are a bunch of different ways to do this. Depends on the size of your database and a couple other factors. So this is not the only way to do this. This is just one way. We're not going to go into the optimization of the queries. We're just going to go from the problem itself. So just a little bit of background. We have two tables. We have a trips table, which has a kind of transaction log of different columns. So we got client, driver, city, status. We have a users, which is it holds users ID, and then a band, and then a role. So we are going to be able to relate both clients and drivers to this table via the ID field. Um, Status is going to be completed, canceled, or canceled by client. That's going to come into play here soon. Each trip has a unique ID, while client and driver ID are the foreign keys to the user ID. So that just basically means these are lookups to this table. So this is a one-to-many relationship. One user can have many different trips, whether as a driver or as a client. So if we go down to the actual ask that we are being asked to complete, that it's looking by day, so by the actual request at date, which is a date field. What is the cancellation rate? And that cancellation rate is calculated by dividing the number of canceled, so whether it's by the client or by the driver, with the number of unbanned users, with unbanned users by the total number. So it's basically looking at unbanned requests that are not canceled divided by the number of total requests from unbanned users from there. So we are only going to limit it down to a couple days here, so 10-1 to 10-3, and we're going to round that to 2 decimal places. It says here we can round in any order, and then does give us some examples here. So here's the trips table. You can see request at date, 4 trips here. We got 2 cancels. But we have a couple bans here as well, so we'll have to take that into account. So I like to start the problems off with just writing some pseudocode of just some requirements as to how I understand them before I get into the details. So to do that, we are going to just look at, again, the cancel rate. What we're optimizing for is the canceled trips of unbanned users, so that's a key there. And we're going to divide that into the total requests of unbanned users, and then we are going to group that by the requested date. So what we're going to do is we're going to just start typing some code out here. So we are going to look at the trips table. I'm going to alias that as T. We're going to do an inner join to the users table. And I'll show you why I'm going to do this one way here. T dot driver ID equals driver dot users. And I'm doing this because we're interjoining to the users table. We're going to alias that as driver. So we're actually going to join to this table twice, once for the driver and then once for the client. So you'll see here we have 2 rows. So we're trying to get both of them within one. And we're going to match on trips.driver ID equals driver.users ID. And then we are going to just, for simplicity, I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go to users again, but this time I'm going to alias this as client and then going to replace that there. So one thing to notice here, so right now we are basically pulling in everything from the trips table, but there is one additional requirement here where there is looking at banned, so we cannot pull in any banned users. So basically, we are going to do another filter on this join. You could do it in the where clause. You could do it in the join. Since it's an inner join, I'm just going to do it here. And driver dot banned equals no. And I'm just going to copy that And what that is going to do is going to filter out any banned clients or drivers because that's one of our requirements. Both the driver and the client must not be banned. And then we are going to add a filter. So, and this request stat is going to be our filter. And then we're going to just copy this here. So we're going to do a between statement. And not sure if this matters, but I'm going to just wrap that in single quotes. Perfect. So now we're pulling everything from our trips table. We're filtering out to only show the unbanned drivers and the unbanned clients. So now we have our data set. Now it's time to think about aggregating. So what our request is again showing the cancellation rate. So we are going to pull this up and just alias that as day. And then what we're going to do is the way that I think about this is it's easiest to do a sum if here. So we're going to basically create a flag that says if the status is in canceled, we're going to count it. If not, we are going to sum the ID. So we're do a quick case statement. So case when t dot status equals and actually, I'm going to do an in statement here. We'll show that in just 1 second why we're doing that. So because of our requirements, we both want the cancellation. So we want cancellation by client or driver. So when the status is in canceled by driver or it's in canceled by client, then I'm going to do a 1. So that means it's canceled, else 0, end. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this in a sum statement because we're ultimately going to group by this request field. And I'm going to go ahead and put that down here. So we're grouped by that. And then I'm going to order by that. And it looks like in there, it didn't matter what order we did it in, but I'm just going to do it in ascending order from there. So essentially what we're doing here, again, this is the, we want to count the number of canceled by drivers, the cancellations by drivers or by client divided by the total number of requests. And then one thing here is we're going to sum that, and then I'm going to do this on another line because it's easier to see. We're going to do a count of t dot ID. So this is the number of actual individual trips. So again, it said here, ID is a primary key for this table. So if we want a count of all of those rows, we want that the count there. So usually there would be some protection here. You don't want to divide by 0, but for simplicity, we're going to skip that one now. And then our last requirement is we need to round that by to 2 decimal places. So if we do that, and then we just do alias that as cancellation rate from there. So just reviewing our code here for a second. So trips is our main table. We're going to users. We're going to users again for the driver and the client. We are filtering out. And I just realized an error here. So here I copied the code, but what I wanted to do is actually do client instead of driver. So that would have caused some weird issues there. So driver matching on driver ID is user's ID, driver banned is no. Going to users again for the clients, client equals user's ID, banned is no. Filtering the request just for these dates, we're grouping by it, and then we're creating our little flag up here showing if it's a 1, it's going to be canceled, else it's 0, and we're just going to sum that up and divide it by the number of records here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and hit run code just to see if we get any errors here. Just double checking. This is it looks like I actually had a period there instead of a comma, so that's a good live example there. Perfect. So it looks like our result was accepted. We had our expected output. You can see here expected 0.33, 0.33. These all match up, and we're going to go ahead and submit that. And then from there, you can see your previous submissions, and you can see that I don't pay attention too much to this. Again, there's so much variance depending on the size of the database and kind of the different tables that you have. But this would get you the right answer. Again, there's a million different ways to do this one, but hopefully this was exciting and gave you a little bit of insight into how to solve that problem. If there are any other problems you guys want me to tackle, feel free to drop that in the comments. But other than that, I appreciate your guys' attention.